Welcome to another episode of Commercial Real Estate Uncovered. Before I introduce my guest, one thing about him that I will say is he is one of the most persistent business people I have ever dealt with. I'm here with Dr. Baktari, who is a CEO of several companies. He's a developer. He's a physician here in Las Vegas. And I wanted to have you on, Dr. Baktari. Thanks for making the time for coming and sitting down with me.
Oh, Erik, thanks for inviting me. Big honor to be here.
So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is the benefits of having a business that you also own the real estate. We'll get into your resume a little bit later, which is an impressive one. Dr. Baktari and I have been involved in different real estate deals as far as we've done some ground-up development that included Domino's. We've done a school, which was a project that we'll start talking about. But like I mentioned, you are one of the most persistent people that I have ever come across in business, even to the point where sometimes I'm like, this guy is driving me crazy. And we'll get into conflict resolution potentially here. But how, just kind of starting off real quick, how long have you been in Las Vegas?
Back in the late 90s, so it's been forever now.
Okay.
I feel like a native.
Now, you own a company called E7 Health, which is your medical practice.
Yes.
And you have a shopping center that you actually built to put that practice in partially. Is that correct?
Yeah, me and my partners, there were several doctor groups, and we needed a location in that area, so it made sense to kind of do the real estate as well as have the locations there.
Now, why did you want to occupy your own building versus renting one?
Well, long term, I think it kind of makes financial sense, especially if you're going to be a large percentage of the space between the three of us, the three groups. We were going to occupy maybe 25-30% of the whole space or the whole project. So it made sense we basically became the anchor if you reverse engineer it. So it really made the project much more likely to work because you're coming in with 30%. Even before you break ground, you're 30% leased even before you start pre-leasing.
Now, are some of your partners tenants in that building as well?
Yes.
So you and a group of partners, so you were able to actually, like you said, you had part of the occupancy already filled. So that, I'm assuming that made financing a bit easier.
Right. We were coming in with 30% lease just out of the get-go.
Did you, was this the first project that you had ever developed?
No, it was probably number 8, 9, 10.
8, 9. What did you ever think when you were in medical school you'd go from, being a doctor to becoming a developer? Was that like a long-term goal or?
No, it was, very, very fortuitous. It was just by accident. I remember back in the early 2000s, I had a small company that did medical marketing, and we needed a space, and I had a friend of mine who was a developer. And we talked about, renting or finding space for that company. And after talking with him, he just sort of said, you're taking enough space. Why don't you just, buy or build like a 5,000 square foot building? And one thing led to another, and there you go.
Did when you did your first project, was there something that maybe in the middle or before that was just a total surprise to you? Something that obviously with experience you learn. Tricks of the trade, but was there something that happened during your first project that was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening?
Well, I was lucky because, my friend who became my mentor in development, he was a massive real estate developer, built those shopping centers. And, for him, a 5,000 square foot building was like nothing. And so he held my hand to his credit, and we were, very good friends. And so, yeah, everything was new. And, he actually let me borrow his team. I got his transactional real estate attorney. I got his civil engineers. I got his architect. So it was a little easier because someone was holding my hand.
Which is, first time you're doing something like that, that's obviously a good way to do it. So one of the things that you kind of had it to your benefit was instead of having to put the team together, you were given a team to do it with, to learn those kind of what to do and what not to do.
Right, and I don't think those were the caliber of teams that probably would not have accepted me as a client were it not for that introduction. So not only is he getting the team, but you're getting sort of a team that he's sort of filtered out over many years. So you're really, you're lucky to get the sort of the A team, as it were.
Development, as anyone has been involved in, we should actually, let's jump into the Yeshiva Day School here for a second. So this was our recent project that I had worked with you on, and just a little background. I had met Dr. Baktari, I want to say probably 15 years ago.
Yeah, forever.
I became your leasing agent on one of your projects, and that was a learning experience. But we did we got some great leases put together, and we did a ground up development where a retail pad. But this was an interesting one. You had reached out to me because you were very involved with the Yeshiva Day School, which is a K through high school. Is that correct?
Yeah, including pre-K too. But yeah, so they do pre-K all the way to 8th grade. So it's elementary school. They stop at high school. But
I thought they had a high school.
Yeah, but it starts like even 2-3 years old all the way to 8th grade.
So you and I were talking one day, and you're saying that your kid's school, that they were going to have to move out of the campus, and we were going to start working to try to find them a permanent home. And we looked at several locations, and we actually found a couple parcels to buy in a great part of town. I'm curious about doing the school development versus like just your normal retail development.
Yeah.
How maybe some differences on that. Somebody who might have not gone through just basic development of retail, and I just know from being a front row seat to that was quite the process.
It really was. I mean, one that involved an assemblage. So anytime you do an assemblage, that's a whole different ball of wax, because you're talking about 3 different sellers, 3 separate escrows, timing, all the you know what we went through.
Yeah.
The art of persuasion of convincing 3 sellers to cooperate, as you recall. I mean, there were many tense and moments that we thought it wasn't going to work. Do you remember? I mean,
absolutely.
Where we
there were a couple different parcels we had to put together, but this is the point, and I think you're very good at this, is navigating a team. And I don't even mean just a team of maybe people who work for you or vendors that you've hired. You were dealing with donors, brokers, the financing side of it. And as you mentioned, this was the trickiest part from my perspective, was having 3 escrows that you needed to line up to close.
And get multiple extensions on all of them. Do you remember?
Yeah, we that was one. That I absolutely do, because one of them was lender owned, so it was not only just a person making the decision; they had to go through a whole board process. Right. But can you talk about after we got the escrow handled and that the land was owned by the school? Yeah. What about the development side? Because after you guys closed, I wasn't involved in the development side as much, and I drive by that campus all the time. I think you guys did a really nice job there. Anything with education is good, but can you walk me through a little bit about some maybe difficulties or highlights of dealing with a school versus a retail development?
Well, just to give a oversight, and now I get it. Like you talk to developers, and they're like, "I do retail, or I do industrial, or I do schools." It is different. I mean, you can't just say I'm a developer, and just because I built residential is not going to let you necessarily walk in and do retail or industrial. There's the pitfalls, the minefields are different. And so some of it translates, but a lot of it doesn't translate. So you have to be willing to say, okay, yeah, I've done retail, I've done commercial, now I'm going to build a school, and that's completely different. So yes, the one skill you do get is to really surround yourself with a team that will fill you in on what you're missing that's new with school rather than. So what we did is we hired a architect that mainly only does schools, and we had a contractor that only does schools. So that really helps. You can't go back to your commercial contractor, and your commercial architect and say, help me build a school. So we had to actually get those specialized people on the team. And maybe, that's part of what a developer does, though, because you may not know everything about industrial, or you may not know everything about residential, but you know enough to say, okay, I'm not going to use the same contractor, and I'm not going to use the same architect and the same civil engineer as I did on my commercial project as I'm doing my residential. So that was number one. You gotta get
hire experts
in that area, and people don't realize that it doesn't translate just because an architectural firm, is kind of general, it doesn't mean that's their cup of tea. So that was really important to get them. And second of all, what we did was there was one building in the middle lot and 2 empty lots, and we basically, instead of starting over, we literally demoed the whole building. Literally, the only thing that was left was the elevator shaft and the staircase, and we just demoed both floors, and we built a school. It was a medical office building, and we just converted it into a school.
Yeah, I remember walking the building before you guys demoed it, and I mean, it was just call center space, and I mean, it was, and oh, this was another thing. We had to get tenants. We had to buy out tenant leases.
You're
that was a
right.
whole nother pain in the
and
the rear
one of
end.
them was a national tenant, a cellular company which will remain nameless, but yeah, it was dealing with their corporate headquarters and convincing. Oh, but they also had an option to extend, and we had to convince some of the wisdom of not extending that lease.
That's right. It's a polite way to say it. We had to convince them. This is a good transition. The school was a very difficult project, and now I want to go into your resume a little bit because I think dealing with you for as long as I have, I really try to pick up notes from people who've had success in different fields. And as I mentioned, I find that you're very good at navigating teams and dealing with different personalities. So I wanted to go into some questions about like leadership skills and how you navigate different companies. So I wanted to go into your bio a little bit, and I'm looking at my notes because there's a lot to it. But you are the principal and CEO of eNational Testing, E7 Health, which is your medical practice, and U.S. U.S. Drug Test Centers. Can you tell me what what you kind of specialize in each 3 of those businesses? Maybe a quick blurb about each of them.
Yeah. Well, E7 Health is brick and mortar here in Las Vegas, and we do preventative health and vaccine medicine. And the other 2 were offshoots of that on a national level. So eNational Testing does some of the core functions that E7 Health does, but we leverage our partners. So we have contract out with laboratories across the country. So basically, we're really the technology then. We're a software development company. We're the Uber app that gets you all the drivers. So for eNational Testing, we're the Uber app that allows you to, with 3 clicks of a mouse, get your cholesterol tested anywhere in the country.
Wow.
So it's, just like nobody at Uber really, drives a vehicle. They're this engine behind it. We're the engine between. We've made laboratory testing Amazon-esque, where, you want a prostate blood test, you want to get a lipid profile, in between doctor visits, you just basically and we're just about to add video conferencing where you can talk to an MD and get a consult on top of the laboratory testing. So that's what we're doing with eNational Testing. And U.S. Drug Test Centers is another offshoot of E7 Health, where we manage companies nationwide drug and alcohol testing for their employer groups. So that was, again, an offshoot because that was a subdivision in E7 Health. But now we wrote the technology and software that operates that.
So that's a lot. You've got a lot you're navigating on those. And I want to, we'll jump back to that in just a second. I just wanted to finish with your bio here. You used to also be the medical director at the Valley Health System, which is one of the hospital systems here in town, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. And also you were the medical director at the Culinary Health Fund, which is here in town, obviously. And you've been you've been interviewed on like the Washington Post, US Today, and Forbes. And then you've also been on the board of a couple medical schools. So
I was professor in a couple of medical schools.
Oh, you were, I'm sorry.
Clinical professor, and 2 medical
So you taught at them. So
yes.
The reason I want to go through those is you obviously have worn many different hats. You've been a physician, you've run companies, you've developed things or like centers. And I go back to, you don't do all those things by not learning how to navigate teams. This is going to be a broad question, but do you have like a secret sauce, or like how do you successfully, as a CEO or an owner of real estate, kind of delegate and are able to handle all those things with, on a day-to-day basis? I guess like another way of asking that would be, if you're going to give advice to somebody who's going to own a business and do a development at the same time, what's some time management or some kind of CEO skills you would share?
Yeah, well, it's very complicated, but obviously you need to have a level of commitment and persistence, what have you. But really at its core, if you really there's only 24 hours a day, and you can only work so many hours a day. So it's really, the whole thing is about building teams, having teams that are bought in, who share the same vision, and you have to take care of people who are part of that team. I kind of think that I wake up every morning, and yes, I want to move the ball forward in terms of the different business aspects, but really my main job is to look after my team and see what they need and how I can help them, and how I can help them grow, professionally, and how I can help them grow financially. And that really is your core job. And if you do that well, and you have this great organization, that allows you to exponentially be able to do a lot of stuff, because it's just not you.
Do you have some key people that have been with you for a long time that are involved in like all your endeavors?
I have let's see, maybe 7, 8 people that have been with me for more than 10, 15 years.
Wow. So like you've created a pretty good company culture then, I would assume.
Yeah, I think that's what we strive. We let people know that, one, we care about them, and that they really do own the company. Because what's the definition of owning a company, right? When you think you're an owner versus an employee, what does the owner? Owner says, if this company grows, I'm going to do better. And employees don't necessarily often feel that. If Macy's doubles their volume of sales, the typical employee may not feel that. And there's nothing wrong with it, but I'm just saying, in a lot of organizations, there's no connection between how well the company does and how well the key people, and actually everyone, does. So I think you have to make that connection and live by it. So in other words, if we do better, you do better, so you're an owner then, because that's the definition of an owner.
Do you have a system with like your employees or people that work with you, like profit sharing or bonuses or something like that?
Well, here's the ultimate irony. I don't think you need to do that. If fully bought in, I'm going to make an argument. Anyone who's been with us for 5 to 10 years would have to take a pay cut to go anywhere else.
Okay.
If you send that message that this is not all about dollars and cents, that this is about helping them grow and us grow and the company grow, we're all aligned. And it's developing that sense of alignment, right? So if I somehow, help the company grow, that's going to mean good things for me. And and I think some of the younger people coming on board may pick that up from the more senior people. Now, it doesn't always work out. Some people just want a job. They just want to come and clock in and clock out, and they're not at a stage in their life where that matters, right? And I'm sure you've seen that. But if you do catch someone who you catch them in the right stage of their lives, where like, yeah, I want something more, this whole idea of being an intrapreneur, like being an entrepreneur inside of an organization, you can find a few people that believe in that, and then you take care of them, then that's a good recipe.
The whole, like you said, wanting more than just looking at the financial side of it. When I switched companies, probably, I think it was 2018, 19, and it took me,
I remember.
Yeah. It took me the longest time to make a decision. I'd been talking to a lot of brokerages, but that's kind of what I was looking for, was this isn't just a financial decision, but people you align with your goals. And it makes for such a nicer place to work. Mm-hmm. You're around these people all the time, and even picking and choosing clients at the point. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's not always just financially based. Yes. So I kind of just reiterate, I take away from what you're saying is that, obviously pay is important, but just building an environment where people want to show up to and aren't miserable at. I mean, unfortunately, just so many people tolerate their work. Do you find that in your different like businesses where you're like the testing facilities versus like your medical practice? Like, is there a big difference on, like, I don't know, maybe you're hiring a medical professional versus somebody who might be in front of a computer all day long?
No, and to the testament to that is some of my senior people in the medical are non-medical people who just started off at some entry-level position and then worked their way up. So I don't think it's medical or non-medical. I think are you driven? Are you obsessed? Are you determined that you really want to do something special? And then are you in an environment where that's going to be appreciated?
Yeah, I can understand that. I wanted to go back to one of my original comments with you, which was you are a very persistent guy. Like when you have a goal, you're on it. Like you're looking at different avenues to getting to that goal. Sometimes being a broker working with you, it can drive me a little bonkers, but it doesn't matter. Like we all have the same goal. How about this? You have a way of getting things done, and you're persistent at it, and you might ruffle some feathers, but there's also there's a professional courtesy. Is there like tell me a little bit about how you're able to that personality trait? Have you always been that way, or is that something that you kind of groomed over time?
Well, that's a loaded question. We'll have to call my mom and ask her that. But that aside,
let's do it. Let's get her.
Let's get her on the phone. Yeah, I'm sure she's available right now. No one's ever asked me that question. I think my job as a CEO is to turn no's into yeses. That's really my job, because if it's a yes, they don't need me, right? If my senior staff can call and it was a yes, I can just whatever. My job, and again, when I say turn no's into yeses, is to figure out how we can turn a no into a yes. Doesn't mean just demanding it. It means I have a podcast where I talk about how to negotiate when you don't have leverage, right? There are times you have no leverage and you got to get someone to convert a no into a yes. How do you do that? We've negotiated an integration with a $40 billion company with U.S. Direct Test Centers and U.S. Gateway, and they said no to us for 3 years. And they're a $40 billion company based out of Kansas, and we were like a fly on the wall. Like, why would they say yes? So, we started going to every conference they were at. We hit them up at every place. We went to their corporate headquarters, did multiple presentations, and we got to know them personally. We took them out to dinner, the executives, and we eventually enrolled them into our vision of what we were trying to do. But if I took the first 10 no's they gave me, we wouldn't be here. So, with this integration we have for them. So, if I can tell you, there's a
I love it.
There's a movie called A Bug's Life.
I know it. Yeah.
My kids are bigger now, but I saw that movie.
I own it.
Yes, 1,000 times I watched that movie, and because it's on repeat, right? And there's a scene in there where there's a bunch of ants who talk, right? And they're walking, and in a straight line, right? And a leaf falls from the tree and right in front of the lead ant, and the ant goes, "What do we do?
What do we do?
Where's that?" And then this other ant that is the hero goes, "Okay, slowly, let's walk around the leaf." And he just, there you go. And this whole this analogy, yes, you're going to have a lot of leaves thrown in front of you. That's not what you earn your stripes. You earn your stripes. Look, you remember when a certain seller didn't want, when we were doing that assemblage.
I do.
How many times did he say no before he said yes?
I called him probably 50 times. Not even I showed up at his office in person because you were persistent. You call me like, what else can we do? I showed up. I actually sent him a cake.
Yeah,
he wouldn't call me back,
with a card and a balloon. Right?
Yep, I sent him a literal cake with my phone number on it, and it said "call me."
Yeah. So my point is, really, isn't that your job though? Isn't your job is to convert no's into yeses? Because if you get the yeses, then I'm not sure why you're needed.
So when your company integrated with this $40 billion company, obviously that was a goal from turning it from a no to a yes. And I love this theme. This is the reason I wanted to get you on here. When you did the no to the yes with this integration of the $40 billion company, did you have to change your business model at all or your messaging? Like, how did you do this over 3 years? Like what? Well,
I don't think they heard our message because we couldn't get past the entry-level guy at this company.
Okay.
So it was then figuring out how we can talk to the higher-ups, and even then meeting with them. Literally, there's 3 or 4 conferences where they had a booth. So we went to all those conferences.
Just to get in front of them in a different element or a different setting.
Well, we had other reasons, but we made it a point to and then the other thing is there were people in the industry that knew us, that knew different peoples at different level. So we leverage that. Say, hey, Bill, can you talk to Susie and, tell them who we are? And so it's leveraging your network of people that know some of the people in their C-suites. So now they're hearing it from multiple places. They're hearing it. We're coming at them. Other people in the industry are coming at them. So at least they know we're there. We're not just a random phone call that's calling them up saying we want to integrate with you.
It sounds like you got some backup when you're trying to do that. Like you said, other people coming. Did you specifically ask them to do that, or was it just kind of like?
In certain cases we asked them, and in certain cases we were aligned with them anyway, so they had some upside to do that.
Do you have any kind of like formal system you go through, like turning it from the no's to yeses, or do you just try to collaborate with people you're working with to come up with ideas?
So like on this, honestly, I went through a whole podcast where I talk about just this, which is there's ways to look at how can I get leverage when I don't have leverage. Okay, and for example, I'll just randomly, I'll give you one. Like, okay, so I may come to you and you're like not interested in working with us because we're too small, right? And so it's not worth your thing. So what we try to do is we say, listen, I know we're small, but we've got these other partnerships lined up. So you may think we're small, but if we execute, we're going to deliver all this additional stuff, which you don't see right now. But let me tell you about those other partnerships that we have. So in other words, you have to start thinking what's important to them. Do they want volume? Do they want margins? What kind of books of business is important to them where they are strategically in their sales cycle? Oh, we need more of this book of business. So let's say they offer 20 services. What's really important to them right now? And what we found out is, they're focused. They want to grow this aspect of their business. Well, guess what? We focused on that. Like, we can help you with that portion because we're focused on it too. And we were, because it was part of our offerings. But that's all you talk about at those dinners. You talk about how you're focused on growing the thing that's important to them.
So you did homework. You prepped for those meetings.
And I talk about that on my podcast. We were on their LinkedIn profile. We know who they are, who just got promoted, where they are, where they went to school, standard stuff. But of course, you have to do your homework and you have to talk to other people in the industry. Hey, what are they working on? What's important to them? Where are the higher ups telling them that their company needs to grow? And then we showed them how we were aligned with that.
Luck favors the prepared. That's like one of the best quotes I've ever heard. I don't remember where I heard it, but your podcast is Baktari MD, which is your last name and MD at the end. You've got quite a few episodes out. I've listened to quite a few of them, but you mostly do them. Well, not mostly, but you have a lot where it's just you solo speaking.
95%. Yeah.
How'd you come up with those curriculums? Just kind of experience shares, we could call it.
Well, it's interesting because I've been giving these courses internally to my. I've been giving these courses internally to my staff.
Okay.
So a lot of what I've been doing, the mentoring I do and the leadership development I do internally in-house, so it became very easy. And obviously I would prepare and I would take notes and then I would do it. But it would be things that my staff needed or wanted. One of my other jobs is cultivate leadership. Right, I take people who, several of my staff literally started in minimum wage back in 2010. Now they're vice presidents and executive leaders. But my job is help grow them professionally, and so we even have an online university that we created for our staff where they get a curriculum. Whether they're marketing person, they're into software, whatever. We actually have an online university internally in-house. So when you look at all those experiences, putting those things together, as well as doing all the mentoring and education, so then you just say, okay, well, why don't we just take this information and offer it to the public? So the C-suite really needs leadership development because you have to teach them things like, for example, a new young leader maybe has a message that they want to tell 5 people below them. and they come up with what they're going to say, and they call all 5 in separately, and they tell them, yeah, by the way, we're getting rid of this service and we're adding this service. And what's important to remember is that you cannot necessarily deliver the same message to 5 people underneath you the same way.
Okay.
You have to calibrate it, right? Maybe that service was really important to that person, or maybe that was their department, or maybe it was their idea originally. Whatever the mitigating factors are, that's a skill set that someone who is moving up in leadership needs to acquire. Sometimes I call you. You and I are friends. We've been through the trenches. I can blurt something out to you, and whatever. You even if it's something that I'm being critical of, I think for the most part, whatever. If I had a new broker or new whatever, it'd be more like, Bill, I know, you thought that was a really good tenant, and I hear, what you're saying. But have we ever thought, and where I'm sort of dancing around you a little bit to get you to come to the same conclusion I have? So in other words, with some people, for example, if you're in a position of leadership, you have to sort of put out the facts, let them come to that conclusion. And you say, oh, okay, yeah, I agree then. So as opposed to saying we're getting rid of this department, saying, well, listen, these are the challenges with that department. Our margins have dropped. There's a lot of competition. What do you think we should do? And these are the numbers. And then they'll come, well, if those are the numbers, yeah, I think we should get rid of that service. Oh, okay. Versus walking into a meeting, we're getting rid of that service. 2 different, and there are some other people where you can walk in and say, hey, we're getting rid of that service. Like, great, okay. You have to calibrate everything.
You have to essentially tailor your message to the person you're doing it to.
But it's the same message.
That is an art form to be able to do that in the right setting, because if you can pick the wrong one, it could totally backfire on you.
Right, but then this is why I say leadership is not a soft skill. You actually need to acquire those skill sets.
Let's talk about Las Vegas in general for a minute. Yes. I know you've been here for a long time. Yeah. I know you're a big Golden Knights fan. Mm-hmm. What are some things that you're kind of excited about here in Las Vegas coming on the horizon? Do you think what's your feelings on Las Vegas long term here?
Well, can I answer that with an anecdote?
You can say whatever you want.
Okay, so I remember it's like when I first moved to Las Vegas, a few years after I moved, I actually went to see a real estate guy, I forgot what, and his secretary or assistant, walked me back to his office. And it was this long hallway to get to his office, and in the hallway there was news clippings over the last couple of decades about Las Vegas, and it was so interesting. And I think it was the late '90s or maybe early 2000s, and each one was from like 5-10 years apart, and each one talked about how Vegas had finally overdone it. Like one was like they had just built the Bellagio. Like there's definitely now too many hotel rooms. We're done. We're toast. They've crossed the Rubicon. They've crossed that line, and so it's so funny because, and I thought, okay, well, that's the past, but no more then, I guess. And you could probably now do the same thing with Resort World and, every other thing that people said, they'll never build a Fontainebleau. They'll never, get it done there. And so, I think people who've been around just never bet against Vegas.
No, and in such a short amount of time, like the Golden Knights, Raiders, we have the Aces, the WNBA team, and now the A's are coming here. Yes. Are you a baseball fan?
Big baseball fan.
You going to get tickets for that one?
Oh, I don't know, because we're just with the Golden Knights and the Raiders. There's a lot of games already.
What about you have a family, you're a busy guy. Do you have any publications or podcasts you listen to regularly to stay up to date, or suggestions that maybe new CEOs should be listening to?
You know who Patrick Bet-David is a guy that I really admire because if he really, I want to say, I don't want to say he's my mentor because I think we're you know, I'm probably older than him, and pretty much, but I see a lot of what he talks about in my thing. You know, he talks about, you know, to really get ahead, you know, you can't just be committed. You got to be obsessed, and this whole thing about work-life balance. You know, if you're again, I think I'm paraphrasing his whole thing, but if you're trying to get work-life balance in your 20s or 30s, you know, that may not be optimal for when you're 40 and 50. So, and it doesn't mean, you know, whatever, but I think his viewpoint on how seriously you should take your career, and I add to that, you know, people always say I need work-life balance because, you know, and you say, well, you know, let me ask you a question. You need work-life balance. What's more important than work? And I was like, well, my family, of course, everyone, you know, my family, God. And then if you really view it that way, then I say, well, you know, what good are you to your family if you don't have a great career? Like, you know, not to say you need to work more than 40 hours a week, but let's say you work for it, but that 40 hours better be great because you can do more for your family, donate more to your church or synagogue, and do more, you know. If you say family and God are important to me, which I would agree with that, are the most important things in life. But you know, wouldn't you complement that and make that so much richer if you had an amazing career? Again, I'm not talking about necessarily working more than 40 hours a week, but I'm talking about having an amazing career. So, and I think that thing about, you know, that Patrick Bet-David talks about, where he talks about taking it seriously and understanding that your career is an integral part of and complements everything else you do in life.
That's a really good segment that you were just saying, because I think that work-life balance, you know, you need to get things done when you need to get them done. And I mean, me being a real estate broker, like yesterday, it was Sunday evening. I had to go run to my office to get something done to send out this morning. I think some people go, oh, it's Sunday, you shouldn't work. I'm like, well, I did my normal routine, but there's something I had to get done. And sometimes there might be projects that require you to put in 10-hour days, but those 10-hour days might let you have a longer vacation or go to, I don't know, wherever one goes to reset.
Yeah, and I think what the phrase he uses, you don't always have to be working, but you always have to be on.
That's true. I travel quite a bit, and one of the things is I always have my cell phone on me. So if I'm gone, I'm still answering my phone. So there's a difference of being on vacation and out of pocket and traveling.
Well, but can I say something really funny? Because I'm often very fascinated when you send an email to someone, and you know that standard reply, I will not be available, and I will have limited access to email. But I'm thinking, you know, you and I have traveled all around the world. I mean, I've been to China. There's no place where you have limited. Who has limited access? What that really is saying, I mean, what it should really say is, and it's okay to say it, I've chosen not to, you know, look at because I'm off, and that's fine. But this whole idea that the internet is down the internet is down in South Africa, or the internet is down in Colombia, it's not true. So it's interesting, because that's just a nicer way of saying, and that's fine. You know, they're an employee, they don't get paid, and that they shouldn't do that. But it's interesting when I read that wording, I'm like, where in the universe is limited access these days? I think you could be in the Amazon and have internet access.
It's funny, whenever I get those automatic prompts, I just tells me, it's just a nice way of saying, hey, I'm not checking my email or calling you back, which is fine.
Which is fine, by the way, because maybe it is just a job, and I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I'll do those automated responses where I'll say, hey, I'm out of the office, contact somebody else on the team. Yeah. But it's funny you say that. I remember this in 2008, I was in Panama, and I was on the Caribbean side, where it's a bunch of just hundreds, if not thousands, of little islands. That's actually like a national park, and there's still indigenous tribe that lives there. And some of these islands are so small, it's like one family lives on this island. And I had one of the first iPhones. I think it was the first iPhone, actually. And my phone worked there. And every single one of the people, they like people who limited clothing. They literally were dressed like they were their ancestors were, and they all had cell phones. So it's like, yeah, if those people are running around with cell phones, you make a really valid point. Other than work, I always like to ask this stuff. So you work quite a bit. What do you do for fun to kind of reset? Spend time with your family, or do you have some sort of hobby you like to stick to?
Well, I mean, be very frank, I'm really involved in my kids and families' lives. I mean, I'm a unpaid Uber driver so I literally, like yesterday, I was back and forth, which I love. The biggest memories I have that really, for some reason, stick with me is my father driving me places, and on a Sunday taking me to a friend's house, taking me to to play baseball, so in fact, my older son was about to get his permit. Said, "Hey, Dad, aren't you excited? In a year from now, you won't have to drive me. You're going to get all this extra time back." And I'm like, you know what? I'm actually sad. That ride is so much fun because we get to talk about things that normally, just being in the house, because we're kind of locked into this car, and just my memory of my dad driving me places without ever complaining, never said, this is killing my Sunday, or this is killing my Monday night to pick you up and drop you off at your friend's house, or pick you up from here or there. I never heard a word, and I try to embody it. So yeah, obviously doing that. Obviously, we love to travel. Whenever we're off, we travel. We try to go away in the summers, and we try to go skiing in the winter. So traveling and having my kids, I took my kids to the Bahamas last year, and having them experience different parts of the world is a big part of what we do.
Just right before we started this podcast, I was talking to one of my friends who said he took his dad trick-or-treating. He was an older gentleman in a wheelchair, and he was excited to go see the kids that were out trick-or-treating. They just kind of changed it up a little bit. I find, I'm in my 30s, and a lot of my friends who have kids, I kind of see it. They prioritize their family time, and some of them work too much, and I'm sure they're missing things. Like, is that how do you? I don't know. I guess a way of asking that would be somebody who is working a lot and has a family, like that time goes by fast. How do you prioritize family time versus professional time and balance that? Do you just schedule around your kids' activities, or?
Yeah. So this goes back to our earlier thing about work-life balance. So like when somebody is in their 20s and they don't have kids, and they have a 5-year, 10-year window where they could destroy the universe and light the place on fire, that's why. And I did a whole podcast on work-life balance. I'm like, kill it. If you're ever going to work more than 80 hours a week or 100 hours a week, do it then, because so you can tee up your life. So when you do have kids and a family, statistically you'll be in a better place, so you won't have to. So part of that is if you were having amazingly good work-life balance when you didn't have a family, that may not, maximize your chances for being able to really take time off and spend time with your family. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's, if I was telling someone who's 20 years old, I'm like, yeah, kill yourself in your 20s.
So final kind of wrap-up question here. If there was one book you would suggest somebody read, what would you tell them to read?
If you're starting a business, I would say Blue Ocean Strategies. It's an old textbook, talks about getting into businesses where your competition is irrelevant. In other words, don't be the 10th accounting firm in one neighborhood, right? Or don't be number 11, right? Because you're in a red ocean just stealing clients from each other. There's nothing you can do but do that. Blue Ocean means come up with something that really, like Uber, where your competition is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. You don't have competition. And so that, go ahead.
No, finish, please.
So I would say, and the second book, you may have to put in the show notes, but it talks about tribal leadership, which is, I'll get the exact name of the book, but it talks about instilling in everyone in your organization that it doesn't matter how great they are. It matters how great they can make others. Because let's say you're amazing and you're even working 80 hours a week, but that's it. For the company to grow, and you're already giving us 80 hours, what more can you do? But let's say you're lighting the company on fire, Erik, and you can create 10 more Eriks or 5 more Eriks. That's the key to success. So don't tell me how good you are. That's given. That's why we're taking care of you. Tell me how many more Eriks are you creating, right? Are you mentoring and taking those people under your wings? Because if every, amazing Erik can do 3 more Eriks, now we're onto something.
That's a great philosophy. Don't tell me how good you are. Tell me how good you can make other people. Groom them to go. That is a great final point here. But Dr. Baktari, what is the best way to get a hold of you if somebody wants to follow you on social media or get in contact with you?
Sure. Well, of course, I'm on LinkedIn at Baktari MD. Also, we're on YouTube, Spotify. The podcast is everywhere. Also, I have a website, baktarimd.com. It has all of our material, all our media, as well as contact information.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for taking some time this Monday morning to
thanks,
talk with me.
Thanks for having me.
Perfect.
All right.